does your body feel like in zero gravity?
What inspires you to become an astronaut?
What exercise do you do? And do you sweat in space?
Would a yo-yo work in microgravity?
So it works.
Station, this is Houston. Are you ready for the event?
Houston, we are ready for the event.
Edwardsville Community Unit School District. This is Mission Control Houston. Please call station for a voice check.
Station, this is Edwardsville Community Unit School District 7. How do you hear me?
We have you loud and clear. Welcome aboard the International Space Station.
Thank you. Good morning. I am here at Liberty Middle School in Edwardsville, Illinois, with over 500 very excited 8th grade students from the Edwardsville School District, as well as some very special VIPs, including visitors from the Johnson Space Center, as well as some mayors from our local communities, and some guest presenters we have for later today. We would all like to congratulate you on a successful EVA this week. We truly enjoyed watching you. These students have been learning a lot about space as part of their 8th grade science curriculum, and they're really excited to ask you some questions. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start with Julietta.
My question is, how did you decide to become an astronaut, and what skills do you have that made it possible?
Oh, that's a great question, and I was inspired early on by the Apollo program where we put humans on the moon. I was born shortly before we actually landed on the moon, and by watching those astronauts explore space, in my mind early on, I thought it would be fascinating and a great contribution to society to be involved in this program and help explore the bounds of space and help to understand the universe that we live in. And as far as skills, that's tough to say. I have advanced degrees, but a lot of people in the United States have advanced degrees as well, and I just feel like I was in the right place at the right time and feel very fortunate and lucky to have been chosen for this unique opportunity.
What planets besides Earth can you see from the space station?
Yeah, we're not that much closer to the other planets in the solar system than you are right now. We're only 240, 250 miles closer, so we can see the same planets you can: Mercury, Venus, Mars, Saturn, and Jupiter. I haven't, and those are all you can just see with naked eye. I haven't tried with the pair of binoculars for the other two outer gas giants, but I'd like to try that one day in the cupola to see what we can see.
Do you guys exercise in space?
Absolutely. We exercise about 2 hours each day up here, and some of that work is on a treadmill or a stationary bicycle, which is next to me here. And then some of that work is on a resistive exercise device, which allows us to do more strenuous activities like bench press or deadlifts or curls or things to really stress the chassis of our body, our skeleton. And that's important so that when we come back to Earth and come back to Earth's gravity field, so that our bones have the density that they need to support our weight, and that our muscles are still strong enough to allow us to walk in Earth's gravity.
When you guys are on the space station, how much can you lift when you're on?
Yeah, I can lift about 110 pounds, wringing wet, really easily. You're really just limited by what you can brace yourself against to overcome the inertia of the object you're trying to move. So compared to Earth, it's pretty much limitless.
How do you communicate with astronauts from different countries that are up there with you?
Well, that's a good question. Sometimes I have a hard time communicating with astronauts from the same country. But with the other astronauts, we have a Japanese colleague with us, Nemo Norishige Kanai, and we have two Russians with us, Anton Skapelarov and Oleg Artemyev, and we talk to them on a regular basis. We speak English officially on the space station, but occasionally we'll speak Russian on the Russian segment, and if we have to talk to Moscow, the mission control in Moscow. Neither Ricky nor I speak Japanese. You don't speak Japanese, do you? So we rarely speak Japanese with our colleague Nemo, but he does a great job of speaking English with us.
Is there anything that worries you about living in space?
Yeah, the journey to and from space and living up here is not without risk, but as I think Mr. Hartman's there with you today, we have an army of people working around the clock, or literally around the world, trying to keep us safe. And so Drew and I and the rest of the crew have the utmost confidence in the people on the ground who watch out for us every single day.
What time zone do you use?
That is a great question, and I get asked that a lot. And we work on essentially the same time as London, England. We call that Greenwich Mean Time, where the time meridian is, the 0 point essentially. And so we, if you go by London time, we wake up at 6 a.m. every day, and we're scheduled to go to sleep at 9:30 p.m.
I don't remember the last time he woke up at 6.
What does your daily routine look like?
Say again?
What does your daily routine look like?
Oh yeah, great question. It's a plan for us on the ground. So we wake up or look at it the night before. We have science activities, maintenance activities. We exercise. We do events with schools and other institutions. Every hour it's something different, which is one of the really exciting things about being here. You could be working on a really intense science experiment 1 minute, and then have lunch, and then go and do maintenance on a really sophisticated piece of life support equipment. So it's very, very exciting.
Thank you.
How does being in space affect you physically or mentally?
Well, you'll have to ask my crewmates how it's affecting me mentally. I think I'm hanging in there so far. Physically, the big challenges we have are loss, if we don't do anything about it, loss of bone density and muscle atrophy, and that's why we exercise. Those are the two primary issues that we have to deal with. We also have greater radiation exposure while we're up here because we are closer to the edge of Earth's magnetosphere and outside of the actual atmosphere. And so we do get higher doses of radiation, but we have detectors around the space station to help monitor that in certain areas that, for example, where we sleep, that have some shielding that protects us from those things. And we have some challenges with fluid shifts in our body, which causes pressure on the back of our eyes, and that can cause some temporary or sometimes longer-term changes to our vision. But we're working hard to study all those effects. That's one of the main reasons we're up here. In addition to the science that we do to help make life better on Earth, we're also trying to understand what the impact is to humans in space so that eventually we can overcome and have countermeasures for all those negative effects and learn how to exist out here for longer and longer periods of time and hopefully indefinitely.
What happens if you get injured while you're in space?
We really try not to hurt ourselves in space. We all have medical training, Drew and I both, but it's very limited. And so if you are to get sick or get hurt, the last person you want to see is your buddy who's had as little medical training as you have had. But we're fortunate. We have a Japanese doctor who happens to be part of our crew, and when he goes home, he's waving to us now. We have an American astronaut who also happens to be a doctor getting ready to launch in a couple of weeks now. So they're there to help us, and we also have flight surgeons on the ground who we can talk to and help treat things from afar.
When did you find out you were going to be selected for this mission?
Well, Ricky and I got assigned at different times. I was essentially assigned to spaceflight 2 years before I launched, or about 20 months. So that was back in 2016. And Ricky was assigned to the flight about a year later. So between the two of us, we trained for 3 years total. 2 years for me and 1 year for Ricky before we launched into space.
Can you see the Great Wall of China or any other man-made objects from space?
Just naked eye, you can see cities, you can see reflections from windows in concrete, depending on when the sun's going to hit. I haven't seen the way the sun hits it. I haven't seen the Great Wall of China. I've heard it's difficult to pick out because it was built with local building materials, so it blends in really well with the Earth. But I have seen photographs taken of it. What you can see, which is really spectacular, are the atolls and coral reefs around the world's oceans, which are built by microscopic or very, very small animals that build coral reefs, and they're clearly visible from space.
Do you guys study plants on board the station?
Well, right now we're studying an onion, how an onion grows. That was a self-designed experiment. You can see it's growing quite nicely. We have grown lettuce in space and grass and flowers, and we're hoping to get some new experiments on orbit to have some new plant growth. We had some lettuce growing a few weeks back with a new methodology for watering those plants that met the investigators' requirements or intents to understand how that process works, but we've recently shut that system down. But we do grow things in space, and eventually we'd like to be able to grow more food to help contribute to our food supply up here while we're on orbit without having to ship it up from Earth all the time.
Are there any food or drinks that you can't have in space that you miss?
Yeah, there's a fair bit. They do a good job of keeping us fed up here in the food. We have a lot of variety, and it's very tasty. But yeah, this time of year, I'm from Maryland, so it's getting close to crab eating season, sitting out in the backyard on a picnic table, and I will miss that. Fresh fruits and vegetables would be welcome. We have hopefully we'll get some arriving here in a couple weeks on the next space vehicle that's arriving, the Cygnus vehicle. But yeah, of course there's stuff you miss, but we're well fed and taken care of up here.
How do you stay connected with your families?
Very similar to the way you stay connected on Earth. We have the capability to make phone calls from up here while we have satellite coverage the way we do now for video calls. So we can do video conferences, we can do phone calls, and we can do email on a fairly regular and immediate basis. And so that's how we stay in touch. Our families also have sent letters to us, actual written letters and cards on some of the supply ships, and those are always welcome to see also.
As a former teacher, are you doing any teaching on the space station?
Just true, yeah. No, we're all doing some teaching on the space station. I think Becky Camus is there. My friend Becky is there with you this morning, and she's going to hopefully talk to you about demonstrations. Drew worked on one just last week about our water, how we reprocess water and make our drinking water here on orbit. So everyone has played a role in helping generate these demonstrations, taking advantage of this unique environment. And I will also have been working on trying to finish up the demonstrations or experiments that Krista McAuliffe intended to complete on the Challenger mission.
Since there is less light pollution in space, do you see constellations we don't see on Earth? How about comets and supernovas?
Yeah, actually we can. There are things we can see those things. There are some that we can see that you don't see on Earth, and usually, so I remember on my first space flight years ago, looking out the window and thinking there was a smudge on the window, and actually it was a nebula way out in space. And so we see those clouds a little more, those clouds of gas a little more clearly from the space station. You have to be looking in the right direction, and we primarily have windows that look down on the Earth, so it's hard sometimes to look out into space directly away from the Earth, where you get a lot of Earth shine coming back into your view. So it helps when it's darker. But other than that, as Ricky mentioned before, we're only 250 miles above the planet, so really what we are out of is the atmosphere that filters the light, but also we're out of more of the light pollution that we get off the Earth, but we still get some, so we can't see everything. With binoculars, you can see a little bit more. So in general, we have a better view. You can really see a nice lineation of the Milky Way, which is fascinating, and also the northern and southern lights are very beautiful from space and very pronounced and easy to see.
What was the transition like from gravity to microgravity?
It's a pure joy, especially when after you've been to space once and your body is adapted to it. When we launch into space and arrive at microgravity, it's just pure happiness.
What do you do with garbage and other waste on the space station?
Well, we collect it and we send it back to disintegrate as it re-enters the Earth's atmosphere in supply ships. So many of our supply vehicles return to Earth, but not in one piece. Once they leave us, they burn up in the atmosphere, and the garbage that we collect, the waste that we collect here in space, goes into those cargo resupply ships and also is incinerated on its way back to the planet.
Has seeing how big the universe is and how small the Earth is in comparison affected you?
Yeah, you can't help but arrive in space, have the privilege to arrive here and look out the window back at your home planet in a context that we're just not used to. The Earth is amazingly beautiful and fragile, and we're all just there, and there's nothing else for a long way. Even with our best technology, we today can't get people from one planet to the next. So yeah, I think it does change your outlook and your attitude toward our home planet. It certainly instills, I think, the values of stewardship, and you really wish that everyone could share that perspective, because I think we would all understand we're in this together.
What kind of hazards do you worry about on the space station?
There's three things that we worry about on the space station, and that is fire, depressurization, or a toxic atmosphere in the form of ammonia, which is what we use to cool our avionics and components externally on the space station. And those are the three emergencies that we train for. We believe those are the critical emergencies that can be catastrophic and cause loss of life and or loss of vehicle. So we practice those response to those events on a regular basis. Sometimes we have false fire alarms up here when the smoke detectors get tripped by dust or other debris in the air. So we always try to be ready and stay vigilant, and we have equipment positioned throughout the space station to help us react to those emergencies.
Wow, what an amazing experience for everyone today. The students, staff, and administration here in the Edwardsville School District would like to thank NASA, the staff at the Johnson Space Center, as well as you, Drew and Ricky, for an amazing once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for all of us. We appreciate you taking the time to help educate our students on human spaceflight. They have an amazing day of activities planned for the rest of today with some amazing presenters that have come in to volunteer their time. So thank you again for making today a day these students will never forget.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. All the best for the end of the school year and a healthy, happy summer for everyone.
Station, this is Houston ACR. That concludes the event.
Thank you to all the participants from Edwardsville Community Unit School District Station. We are now resuming operational audio communications.